I was in Bangkok a few months ago. I was attending the Global Summit of Women. So during that summit, a number was being shared with the delegates. Today, in 2022, 20% of the board of directors in global Fortune 200 companies are women. Now, 20 years ago, it was 10%. So it actually took us like almost 2 decades, right, to move this 10 percentage point in terms of female representation. Yes, we are progressing, but certainly not fast enough, is it? Now, if you just think about today's world, the converging technology that we're experiencing is actually disrupting the nature of work in terms of how we work, where we work. So the question is, could this actually be a pivot point for us, whereby we said, we're going to throw away the past assumptions, we're going to throw away the past practices to really create more opportunities for women to come back to the workforce and for women to accelerate their progress to the C-suite. So I'm your host for today, and I'm joined by 3 lovely panelists. Now I'm just going to go straight to the first question that I'm going to ask our 3 panelists here, Nutan, Mukta, and Diana. Now just think about today. We have a very low percentage of female representation, whether it's in management roles or global 500 Fortune CEOs, or even in AI, in the field of AI, or in the field of technology, right? Female representation is very low. What do you think are some of the key roadblocks that's driving this? And maybe we can hear from Nutan first.
Thanks, Joe, and really excited to be here. Firstly, I think I'd love to see a bit more gender diversity on a panel in the future. That would be wonderful, isn't it? So in the reality, I think the question of addressing women at work needs to start with women and in society, right? And we have still very binary ways of looking at how work gets done, paid work, unpaid work, and the lives that we lead in terms of that. So putting that aside for a minute, when you think about what are the things that we could control within organizations, I typically look at 3 roadblocks. One around insights. So how is the company organizing, collecting data for the main pinch points that exist in the employee life cycle? The second is around infrastructure. So do we have the enabling mechanisms, the processes, the systems to detect where unconscious bias is happening? So do we have a way of addressing that? And the third is really around getting this whole idea of inclusion in a way that's lit up in the daily lives of our employees and beings. So the roadblocks in those 3 I's are the way kind of I frame that for myself often.
Very, very succinct and very, very helpful. Thank you for sharing. Mukta?
I completely agree with Nutan. It's societal is frankly one of the major things, because in Asia, if you look at it, in most of the countries, we still have, women is still considered as a primary caregiver, when there are children or when something happens in the family, etc. And it does impact, the ability of women to pursue the career. So if you look at the career ambition, it becomes like, for example, the main domain of a male compared to women. So I think unless and until the society changes the mindset, and which I think is happening in some parts of Asia, but not in all parts, this is not going to change. So when we look at investment banking, for us in Societe Generale, when we go up the ladder, as you can imagine, the number of women decreases at MD level. But it's also because from the beginning, from schools, how many girls take mathematics as a subject or finance as a subject? And then when you go up the line, it decreases because then you have pressures of managing a family. We still in Asia they still have to look after the family, which is there. So it just keeps on dropping. So it's very systemic and it has to be actually addressed at the root. But we can discuss about it in the other questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Diana?
Yeah, I agree absolutely that there is this issue that's not just technology about in the pandemic. In fact, more women are leaving the workforce. More women have had more to do at home, and it's been really difficult. And so I love the sort of framing of this. How can we build back better? How can we do more? On the other hand, I'm incredibly optimistic with new technology, with blockchain, with creator economy. Women are excellent leaders and they're great at managing to outcomes, not presenteeism, because of all the different pressures we have. So if there is a shift in terms of the creator economy and owning the value that you produce, then I think that women will be even more excited to contribute in the workforce.
Right, and you talked about technology. And of course, this is Tech HR. We will have to double click on technology in a bit. Now, before I go to that question, maybe I can just stay on with you, Diana. What do you think the post-pandemic shift, what would be some of the opportunities that we will actually bring to women at the workplace?
So I think that a tech-enabled shift towards a gig economy in the United States, 38% of people are identifying as gig economy workers. So this, may not be counted as full-time employees, women in the workforce. But for example, if you are making as much money or more in a portfolio career and project career, I think that, the opportunities are endless. We may have to look at the way that we report women in the workforce differently. And if people have technology skills, if they have that kind of ability in Web3 and blockchain and metaverse, they can market their skills and create value without necessarily having to be, with a job title in a senior role at a company. They can make as much money, create as much value, and have the flexibility that they might want, enabled by technology within the tech sector. That's my hope.
Thank you. And Mukta, any thoughts from you?
I think this is, with the environment that we are in and the flexibility that the organizations are now willing to give to all employees, including women, I think this is really an opportunity for, and what we have seen in our women employees, what they say is that flexibility has really helped them to balance a number of things which are there, and they feel it's much more productive. We also have a return to work program, which we launched last year. And when we were speaking to those women who were coming back, they said that if they had flexibility in the past, and the organizations were that much open about it, frankly, they would not have taken a break because they would have been able to manage the career and the life, on the same kind of platform. So I think this is something which is helping women quite a lot. And I agree with Diana, and maybe the gig economy, which because of technology has grown quite a lot, has actually given employment to a number of people, and it can go further. I think it's not structured right now, but I foresee that this will become a big element in giving employment to women and maybe increase that, employability that we look at. And people can work from anywhere now. So in a way, with constraints, because I work in a regulated industry, so there are a lot of constraints. But this is something which really can be explored, and companies are exploring.
Right. And because we have very diverse panelists today, I do have to hear from everybody on this question. So, Nutan, what's your perspective? How does the shifting trends post-pandemic actually create opportunities?
So there is, so I look at this problem, basically short-term, long-term, there's bad news and there's good news, okay? In a short-term basis, I think we've just come off COVID, right? Yeah. And part of this, all of us know proportionately, women have actually left the workforce in much bigger numbers as a result. I think in South Asia, it's something like 25 to 56% of women who have left the workforce. And so the short-term problem that we need to address is how do we bring some of these women back? To Mukta's point around having some of these returnships, I feel like there are some very tangible, tactical things that we can do to invite women to rejoin the workforce. I think tied to that is this whole agenda on reskilling, right? Because we need to make sure that we are bringing women back at the same levels when they left. Maybe there's some capability sets missing. How do we reskill our women workforce to be as effective or more, right, to play in that arena? I think in the longer term, the opportunity that tech brings to us is multifold. I think we're starting to see that in the immediate, right, in terms of how the systems and tools that are in place, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether you're thinking about disrupting the unconscious bias in our recruiting processes, the way we actually write some of our job descriptions, all of that good stuff is starting to play. So I'm excited, I'm optimistic that I think in the longer term, we're going to see more acceleration in this space, which means amazing outcomes, I think, for women, and generally, women in the workforce.
Right. So can I just double click on the use of technology, whether it's AI or blockchain or Web 3.0? How do you think the leveraging of technology would actually create probably or enhance the equity, right, of females in the workplace?
And there's a good joke around. When you just think about artificial intelligence in itself, it's innate and it doesn't really it doesn't think in binary ways, right? It doesn't. We human impose our own biases into the systems and tools that we create, right? Yeah. But having said that, I think the challenge for us as we go forwards is really being very attuned to, I think, where we can enable the systems to help us unlock some more value in the entire employee life cycle, right? All the way from how we hire to, when we have exits. But part of that is also just enabling, our own mindset, shifts in our own mindset within the HR community or the people community in terms of playing with technology in a way that actually is exciting versus fearing technology and what it's doing to us. And I think we don't have an option. The option is that we need to learn technology, we need to learn how to play with it, and we need to help amplify it in a way that is going to be humanistic in the long term.
Thank you. Diana, do you have perspective there?
We've been looking at diversity and inclusion beyond just gender and the role technology plays in it for a long time. So some of the interesting things I've seen from clients is the way that they start to have learning and outcomes of learning and hiring based on university programs, for example, in a bank, having a trading class whereby they don't look at the different gender or sometimes even the school. They have sponsored this specific trading class, and whoever is doing the best at trading, that's who they hire. They are hiring based on outcomes and skills. And that, I think, is the kind of technology intervention, AI, of course, being able to look at people's skills beyond necessarily their gender or ethnicity or abilities, except as it relates to the outcome that they're looking for. So I do think that is pushing things in the right direction. As we talked about, of course, the bias that we carry often goes into our technology. So we have to think about that from an ethical perspective. But I do think that we can harness technology to bring more people into the pool of talent. And certainly with talent crunch, that is a huge issue. One of the things we were talking about at lunch was personalization of employee experience. And how do you personalize the way that you have somebody's career path and engage them at work and also have equity? So that's something that I think is going to be, it's a real tension. There is no right answer right now. We're building it as we go along.
So any practical tips in terms of how we can better help women leverage on technology to help ourselves? Any practical tips?
Oh, maybe not a tip, but what I feel is that technology is a great leveler, because then what matters is the skills and how you can use it. So the tip for me will be to become more digital oriented, not only digital oriented, but also data oriented. And then this is what is going to really help everybody actually leap forward in future. So this very general tip here from me.
Right. And you will notice that our discussion really focused around forward, right? In terms of the trends, in terms of tangible actions to help us get better. So we didn't spend a lot of time on the roadblocks. I just want to make sure I clarify that because there's just been so many forums talking about the roadblocks already. And that's why we're focusing on what can we do about it, right? So the next question is really about opportunity, right? So going into 2023 and beyond, what do you think is that one big opportunity that's really going to help our women at the workplace? So this could be, it could be economic, it could be policies, it could be any opportunity that you can think. One.
Well, I'll probably go back to the three I's that I called out. And I think in each of that, so if you think about, and I know you said one, but really, if we don't have insights and we're not driving accountability in with our leaders, with our managers, with our frontline managers around taking ownership on, the overall agenda on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also just where are the pinch points in the gender diversity conversation. If we don't get that right, everything else goes to a little bit of a downer, right? So how do we make sure that we've got the right toolkits in our organization to measure, to hold the accountability with leadership across the board that also ties to the way that they are remunerated?
Mukta?
I think the one big opportunity is, again, for me, I see is the flexibility part of it and the mindset shift that we have seen over the last 2 years in everybody, in terms of how work can be done. And this can really benefit women quite a lot, as I said earlier. And the other thing is that people are also, in organizations, are also taking unconventional decisions, maybe forced to do because of the talent crunch sector or people who are thinking about priorities in life. But I think it's a big opportunity for women because this can open doors, and some organizations are progressive enough to do it. Some are not doing it yet, but I think they will be forced to do it because there's just not enough talent which they want, the plug and play kind of talent. So I think this is really a big opportunity for everybody, both males and females, but females much more.
Thank you. Interesting. Diana?
All right, we're at People Matters and we're at a tech HR conference. So I'm going to say that the biggest opportunity is data transparency and pay equity. We should be able to see how many people are within a company and what they're earning. And if we could achieve pay equity, I think that would be a fantastic first step to equalize opportunity for women in digital.
I love that. Yes, Nutan.
Can I just add one more?
Yes,
I think
please.
underneath what we all have said really is the mindset shift that we need, right? Amongst our leaders, among our organizations to be able to do that. One of the things that I've always struggled with, in how do we start to unlock mindsets around gig economy? Like we talk about it, we love the word, it's a nice 3-letter word, but really what does it mean in terms of converting active gig economy participation that would actually unlock a lot of value for women?
And frankly, I think it will happen because there's no choice, so that's what I was saying about the talent crunch. And I think it's forcing people to think of different ways of employing people and looking at those gig players. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I would like to do it. I would like to be a gig economy worker, but maybe it will happen in some years' time.
Right, and just the business case for driving the gender parity is very clear, and it's also very evident that we are just not progressing fast enough, right? So just by hearing the opportunity, let's talk about very tangible actions or advice that you can actually provide to our HR practitioners here or to the company. So let's make it very tangible. Maybe you can talk about one thing we could stop doing and one thing we could start doing.
Okay, maybe I can take this first. The first, and I take it from Diana, she spoke about pay equity. And I think it's extremely important that companies are conscious about it and make sure that there is gender pay gap is not there, you know. I think that that's very important. The one thing that they should stop doing is basically stereotyping either gender, because sometimes for some functions we feel that this gender is better than others, etc. And I do think that we need to get rid of that bias that we have from years and really look at things differently. Take what we call chances, you know, on people. Take chances on unconventional profiles that we come across. And I say it, but I know that it's not that easy to do it. But if we don't do it in small stages, it will never happen. So we need to take that leap. And as HR, I think we need to push our management to do it if they are not ready for it. We need to keep on pushing. It's perseverance, but it should be done. Otherwise, nothing will change, you know. So
I think that I agree with Nutan's assertion, you know, talking about what we could start and stop doing. Yes, to pay equity, of course. Imagine if everybody that was working got paid that much more. First of all, there'd be more motivation for you to go after that job. And you would have more opportunity with more income to maybe solve some of the problems of flexibility. So certainly that is a big one. What should we stop doing? To a certain extent, maybe, and this is going to be very against my own desire and values and excitement about emerging tech, and very much to Nutan's comment about mindset, we should stop thinking that technology is going to solve all of our HR problems. So maybe not a popular sentiment in this particular room, but we really have to step up as people, as leaders, and think about what kind of things that we can do in our company to lift people up. And the technology can enable that, but it's not necessarily always going to lead. The people have to lead.
I think, so I've got something for women or women allies here. Firstly, just get comfortable with discomfort, right? So you got to really kind of put yourself out there and highlight things that are happening. So one of the examples I have is our biological selves typically are kept very close to our hearts, right? We don't talk about menstruation. We don't talk about menopause, women, right, generally. We're starting to talk more about that because really it is interspersed with the way that we are effective at work. It does impact mental health. So there is an element for women to come out and be comfortable talking about these things, right? So that as an ecosystem leader, HR leaders, all of us can start to think about how does that then play out in the way that we think about our benefits, the way that we think about life at work, in a way that is a lot more holistic. What we should stop doing from, again, a HR lens is, I think we should stop doing one-off programs. We should stop doing that training class, one-off, right? That is going to solve something that we're after. I'm not saying training is bad, right? It's absolutely the reverse. But how do we drive thinking in a much more systematic way? Pick one pain point in your organization, right? Work through the entire life cycle of the employee and see how you could solve it one at a time. So really not going after the big sexy stuff necessarily, right? But being very, very realistic and pragmatic on the first steps that you can take. But it's not this one-off thing that's going to solve.
Very, very useful advice, very actionable as well. Now, I do want to make sure I give the audience, the delegates, the opportunity to ask questions. Any questions from the floor? And we welcome any questions from the booth as well, right? We need to be very inclusive. So any questions from the floor for our panelists? No questions? All right, so let me ask you probably one final question to wrap up today's dialogue. What do you think is that, maybe let me rephrase it. As leaders yourself, right? what would be the one bold advice? And I said bold, right? One bold advice you would give to either women out there or to companies or to our HR practitioners there. What is that one bold advice that you want to leave the audience with? Diana, you want to go first?
Absolutely. So this is to all you women out there, but you men can take my advice too. It is to get behind Web3, find something you think is interesting about that. That is a rocket ship, and it will have bumps along the way, but that is something that is a huge growth area. Sheryl Sandberg, formerly of Facebook, used to say about careers, find a growth area and do anything at all to get involved in that. And then it will take you to amazing places, much more than being at the head of something that's not growing. So I think that Web3 is amazing. It's something I'm investing my own time in, and would be something I think would benefit in whatever way. Find that small, interesting part of it that you can learn about, and then let's work together on building that.
Thanks, Diana. Mukta.
For me, it will be, believe in yourself and believe that you can do much more than you're doing right now. And don't let naysayers stop you, because there are plenty, sometimes when you're trying to do new things. So, and experiment. This is what I have done myself and I keep doing. Experimenting, keeping an open mind will really help us take to the next level. Otherwise, we will be in our little box, where we are. So.
Thank you.
I think the one bold thing is to be bold. Find your voice, courage of convictions, go after what you believe in, pick one thing, because you can't solve it all, right? Well, what is the one thing you have fully, you can put your heart and soul and mind behind, and then go after it in terms of a systematic approach into conversations that you can have with leaders in the organization.
Yeah, the International Women's Day for 2022 theme is Be Bold. Well, so thank you so much for joining us. I certainly hope that in the future, we don't call it a women leader, we just call it a leader. You don't need to put a gender before the leader. So thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.